to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Policy. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of this meeting has notified the superintendent's office. The desire to speak has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting will also be read and be part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. First order of business is to approve our minutes from our meeting on October 15th.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the meeting of October 15th, 2024.
Second, okay. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 5-0. All right, next up, we'll hear from our student reps.
The CHS class of 2025 craft fair will be held on Sunday, November 17th from 9:30 to 3:30 p.m. In the high school gymnasium. There will be $3 general entry, but kids and senior citizens will go in for free. At this craft fair, you will look forward to seeing jewelry, clothing, candles, baked goods, woodwork, and a lot more. The CHS Beauty and the Beast performances will take place on November 1st and 22nd at 7:30. Two shows on Saturday the 23rd, one of them being at 1 p.m. and one of them being at 7:30 p.m. Students can purchase their tickets at lunches, but tickets are also sold online and can be accessed through the Chelmsford High School homepage. Along with this, tickets are sold at the door. The CHS Ecology Club is throwing a Chelmsford High School cleanup day on November 20th. This will allow students to help pick up trash that's all across the school. Additionally, they have started and continued their compost bin, which allows students at lunches to compost and their food scraps for healthy recycling. Fall sports are coming to an end. With that, winter sports are starting up this afternoon. There was a winter sports meeting, which athletes can meet with their coaches and see what's expected of them through their upcoming sports season.
Tomorrow night will be the 8th grade parent night in the gymnasium from 6 to 8. High school students will also be there to share their perspectives on classes offered at the high school as well as what the upcoming 8th graders can expect to learn and see once they enter the high school. I will be there for environmental science if anyone stops by. And then with Thanksgiving coming up, our Spirit Week starts on Thursday, November 21st, ending on Wednesday the 27th with our pep rally to prepare us for our rival game against Billerica. For those who are not familiar with pep rally, that is where all the students get together in the gym and cheer as loud as they can with performances from the band, cheer, dance, and color guard, as well as pieing in the face and tug of war. Events for Spirit Week include Spirit Days, Chelmsford Trivia, clothing and food drives, karaoke, attending Beauty and the Beast, Powder Puff, which is flag football with girls being able to play, as well as homecoming for all grades. And then this Friday, the Chelmsford High School National Honor Society Board will be attending a conference at Holy Cross. Meeting with the other Massachusetts National Honor Societies, the Chelmsford Board will conduct a presentation sharing how Chelmsford students here at the high school serve their community. We will be sharing events such as the Christmas tree lighting, Haunt for a Cause at the Paul Center, Byam Family Math Night, peer tutoring programs, school-wide cleanups, and many more. We hope to hear from other towns and student accomplishments and learn from them, as well as inspire other students by our Chelmsford pride. And I say we because I'll also be attending that. So.
Thank you very much.
Busy.
Okay, any other good news we want to share?
We had a very successful full PD day. It was exhausting, I think, for everybody involved. We split the day up into two parts where they started off in their buildings, elementary stayed in their buildings all day, and then we were able to bring back, we resurrected our Ed Camp model, and we had a lot of good discussions. Ice cream was on the docket, and prizes with Dr. Lang was the one that was able to pass out all the prizes, so it was a good day.
Great. Anybody else have any good news they want to share? Okay. All right, doesn't look like we have any speakers tonight?
Nope.
So we'll
So
move
we
on to
can
new
jump right
business.
into new business. We've actually got several items. It's good seeing you. It's been about a month since we met, just the way the things fell. But we've got a few facility-related items tonight to talk about. The first is to kind of finalize our capital planning and prioritization list for consideration. The town's capital planning committee is going to be meeting for the first time this coming Thursday, and then we meet the following Thursday to present school projects. And then in early December, we'll all convene to kind of figure out exactly what the town will be able to fund and what may need to get deferred to other years. So I did a couple of things. I updated the sheet that I provided at the last school committee meeting because two of our projects actually were favorably funded through town meeting. So when we had our town meeting, the tennis court area renovation over at McCarthy Middle School was approved using free cash. So that $975,000 is already earmarked for the project. That can then come off our list because it's not going to be needed to be funded through town capital anymore. And then the South Row roof project, just 2 days after town meeting, we did receive official word that the South Row roof was going to qualify as an accelerated repair project. That's estimated to be about $1.2 million. But that will actually go through a bonding with the town outside of the capital planning committee. So that $1.2 million also came off the top. So almost $2 million worth of projects, or a little over $2 million worth of projects, were already approved. So I was able to kind of highlight those. I want to keep them on the list for tracking purposes, but you'll see they're at the very top in red, and we don't have to allocate a budget to them. So right below that, we had that first tier that I highlighted in green for this, that were kind of in my kind of top school safety security order. That was to add the secure entryways at the remaining schools, as well as a stairwell renovation at Chelmsford High School to help with emergency egress. That was the first tier that added up to $877,500. And then we had a second tier that was more kind of structural. So we had a partial roof replacement at McCarthy last year. So there are several sections of roof at McCarthy. You're going to see the McCarthy roof for a couple of different years. But this particular section was budgeted or estimated to cost about $1,250,000. Last year, the town meeting funded $250,000 to be able to start the work of engaging a firm to put specs together and things along those lines. But we need to go back for the actual work to be completed, which would be about another $1 million. McCarthy is in need of a new boiler replacement in the school for heating. A section of Center School roof needs to be replaced at 130. And then there's a hot water tank domestic hot water tank at South Row that has been on our list for just under 100. That category actually adds up to $1.9 million. And those, again, are kind of more of the nuts and bolts physical things that we had previously talked about. I know at the last meeting, I actually went back because there were some hardwood floor renovations at several of the schools, the stages to be redone, repair and whatnot. I spoke with Brian Curley about that. We had a company come out and actually update some pricing for us, and we're actually recommending not going forward under capital for that. It ends up being a lot less money than anticipated. When we looked at the Durham Whittier study, we're not looking to turn those stages into performance stages like we have at the PAC or at McCarthy. So the number we were carrying was significantly higher because that would have done that. So if you happen to go on the stage at McCarthy, it's not hardwood anymore. It's like a black, I forget exactly what you call it, but it's like a surface that's more for like plays and performances and things like that. The stages at the elementary schools, Harrington and Byham, South Row, it's more of just like, not a true performance stage. It's to be able to have like a little, say, a school play or something like that. But they actually just need to be resanded and polyurethaned. We're not going to put the black performance staging on top. So it's a lot less expensive. That's something that actually the company feels that they can do over some school vacation weeks. So we might even engage some over Christmas break or February, April break. But likely we'll do that in-house. It just isn't going to raise to that level. And then I know Diana had asked about, just as an example, the finishing of the art classrooms at the high school, and like how important is that compared to some of the other projects we were looking at. Bill on it, so what's remaining is basically some additional furniture for the rooms, and then the biggest issue was the technology upgrade. That was where the cost was coming from. But Bill said he could get another year or two out of them if we had to. He updated the RAM and the computers to make them operate a little bit better. The art rooms themselves have been getting great notes. Everyone at the school is really happy with those rooms. So that is something, just kind of given the scheme of things, we felt like we could defer another year or two and then do like a complete overhaul. So I had just, for the sake of this exercise, kind of bumped those down to be the top two items in tier 3. And you see some notes still tier 3, 4, 5s. In the very end, if you take a look at tiers 1 and 2, it comes up to about $2.8 million. I don't know exactly what the town's going to have to fund, but, originally, some years back, they used to do about $3 million a year. It's gone up to 4, it's gone up to 4.5. It's probably going to be in that $4 to $5 million range when all is said and done. I don't know the exact number, but John Souza, the town treasurer and accountant, will work with us on that. But where our first year was coming up to just under $3 million, I actually think it would make sense to present those as like our priority projects and present the detail with the budget for the remaining projects, because obviously, in total, that's about another $4.8 million of projects to show the town that we have this need in the future years. But I don't think it's overly realistic to think that we would receive much more than the 2.8 million. And instead of throwing 20 different projects at them and having there be any kind of confusion, my recommendation would be to, if you agree, kind of go in with these first 2 tiers of actual projects that we recommend and really try to fight for, and then have the others be obviously on the docket so that we're letting them know that they'll be seeing these in the future. But we don't expect necessarily that those would be funded this year. And then we might come back in some of the smaller ones. Again, let's say it's the wood floors or something like that. We might look to do with our own one-time money come the springtime. But I think this $2.8 million really does handle the next wave of safety and security, as well as some of the bigger structural things when it comes to a roof or a boiler, things like that, that are going to keep the schools functioning. So I made those couple of revisions for you in the spreadsheet. And just wanted an opportunity to kind of talk that through the strategy to see if that's something that you agree with and you think makes sense, if it's something you want to alter. But ultimately, my hope at the end of the night is that we agree on which projects we actually would recommend in this kind of priority order to the Capital Planning Committee, so that when those conversations related to the school department happen next week, and then when we do our reconciliation in early December, we're all on the same page.
Any questions or comments?
I have one question. Given that we now have a better sense on the kinds of roof projects that the MSBA will fund, like the South Row one, I know it was 52 years old or something like that. I'm curious if there is any possibility of the other roofs that are on this list qualifying, and if there could be an argument for deferring either of those projects and elevating others if those looked likely, or if they are not likely to be eligible in the near future and they really would need to be funded through this.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We actually did look at that. I meet with Brian Curley, our facilities director, and then Christine Clancy, who's the DPW director, and Paul Cohen every month to review our projects and things like that. So the South Row roof was actually, the section that's being replaced had just hit the 25-year mark. I know the school is much older, but the roof section itself had just gone over the 25 years. And 25 years was the minimum age that the MSBA would approve a roof through the accelerated repair project. We did take a look at the roofs that are coming up. The center one is just nowhere near 25 years. The McCarthy roof is just approaching 21 years. It doesn't have another 4+ years of life in it. And then you actually still have to go through the whole process. So even this South Row roof that's going to be funded through the accelerated repair, the funding is awarded now. We actually have to go through about a year's work with the MSBA to get all of the documentation ready. And a roof like that has to be done during the summertime. We
Right.
can't have it done in a school during the school year. It's too disruptive. So there's no way we're going to get it done in the summer of '25. So that's already a summer of '26 project. So some of, like a McCarthy roof, by the time you let it get to 25 years, again, that's if the program doesn't change at that point, and then you actually apply, you're probably looking at another 8 or 9 years of having life. And they are basically in a patch and repair mode at this point. So there are active leaks, and they have to go up and patch and repair them to kind of keep the roof going. So we all, sitting at the table, said we can't get 8 or 9 more years out of this. It's just, we have to just do it this way.
Yeah,
so,
I'm
but
not
we did-
opposed to that. I just want to make sure it had been
Yeah, we
considered.
did look at that, and just to see if anything was actually going to even come close to triggering the 25 years, and unfortunately, the roofs before you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Good list.
Yeah, yeah.
Does the strategy make sense?
Yeah.
As far as kind of really honing in on these two?
Yeah.
I think it's important for us as a committee to prioritize this and to only present what we really think is important. After attending, town meeting and realizing the amount of work that has to go on at so many different buildings throughout the town, we are a very large part of the town budget. So I honestly think that this is important to do this.
Yeah.
When you go to these meetings, right?
Right.
Dennis,
Yeah.
is
And I was
that-
gonna say, I'm fortunate to serve in the committee, and yeah, there are just so many projects, and so many of them are infrastructure type projects, like roofs and heating systems and elevators, and, so to get other things through, like the McCarthy Park was a great idea, but I think we'd be hard pressed to do that. So, making a list where we're prioritizing security and, in the parts of the building that really need it, like the boilers and the roofs, it makes the most sense. So we talked about it a couple times last week, and I think this is probably the best. And we go in there with a reasonable request. We're not going in with $9 million and say, hey, we want to do all this. We're saying this is what we need, and hopefully we'll be able to get most of that, so. Yeah.
And I think we have to just be cognizant of the fact that this town had like this big building boom in the, 70s, early 80s, and all over town, these buildings are reaching that age at the same time. So we just have to be cognizant that we do have to prioritize things this way, and it just makes sense to me to do it this way. Because we're sharing the money with a lot of
Yep,
other
exactly.
Groups in town.
All right,
Just
any-
wanted to confirm that there's no, so I see there's two things here that refer to being ADA accessible or ADA signage. Is there anything in which we are, off of code and there's serious concerns about accessibility issues that are on those? So I'm looking at the Harrington
yeah,
exhaust fan and ADA signage and the Byam ADA accessible cabinets, countertops, shelving, and sinks.
Yeah, we would only be out of code if we did like major renovations and things like that to the facility where we're not. So we don't have a code issue now. If we were to do major projects and it would have a trigger current code, then that would come into play. We don't have any ADA issues with our own students or staff right now accessing the building. It's more just for the
Anticipating
future
a future
and
need.
not being able to anticipate we may need to. So it's something that we'll obviously still keep on the radar. And even again, as we look at some of these projects, if they end up being smaller in scale, it could be something that we just decide we want to just tackle on our own, and we use our own one-time money to do.
Okay.
We wouldn't want to use our own one-time money to do, say, like a furnace.
Right.
Or a roof or something like that. That would just be that'd be too much.
Okay, thank you.
Right, any other thoughts, questions?
Just thinking that it's really been great that we got to do the cafeterias, because we had all of those health kind of issues. Bringing up the ADA compliance made me think of that. I think it's really, really good, and it was because it was prioritized. So I think that this is the way to go. The safety has got to be number one.
Yeah. No, we have 3 really state-of-the-art cooking and preparation kitchens at this point at the high school and the 2 middle schools. They're phenomenal. They're going to last for years to come.
It is.
Yeah, it was well worth it.
Did the doors just on this, did the doors get done at McCarthy? Is that, are they in?
That was this weekend.
Okay.
So they work began yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So by the end of the week, they'll be completed.
That's
But
great.
yeah, that actually got scheduled. They were waiting for like a long weekend to be able to do it. So they were able to start yesterday. So by the end of the week, that'll be up and going. And we are using that new secure entry, though, that happened prior to this. That's been going very well. That's actually, the feedback has been very positive about that. A lot less just kind of random foot traffic through the building. And even like, the parents coming in, if the child forgets a lunch or an instrument or something like that, it's just much more easy just to leave it there, not have to get all the way into the school and come back. So no, that's been working well.
Great, thank you.
Right, anything else? Okay, we'll take a motion to accept the,
I move that we accept the proposed capital planning and prioritization schedule that has been presented tonight.
I'll second the motion.
all right, any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 5-0.
Great, thank you very much. Second, still staying on the theme of schools. We received, about a week or so ago, a certification letter and enrollment certification and letter for the Parker Middle School potential new school building project. So this is something that is kind of like a key component in the new build, because what you have to do is work with the MSBA to actually certify what your design builds are going to be for the various options that you want to look at. So we've been certified to take a look at just a one-for-one replacement of Parker, which would be a 2-grade level school, 5-6. We can do 3-grade level school, a 4-5-6, which takes a grade level out of the elementary, makes those buildings last a little bit longer because now they've got extra space capacity. Or the third option is to look at a brand-new 5, 6, 7, 8, kind of bringing both middle schools back together, kind of a mega middle school, and then being able to reutilize McCarthy as an elementary or some other type school in the district, so McCarthy would still stay online. Working with the MSBA, you want to make sure they call it kind of right sizing, but you want to build to the right enrollment that you need. You don't want to build too low, and you don't want to build too high. If you build too high, it's our money that's kind of being wasted. It's also state money being wasted. So this is a critical step that they look very closely at us with. To prepare for this step that we had to take, you have a series of documents and information that we have to submit to MSBA. So we ended up doing that over the course of the summer. You then have to hold meetings with the MSBA. Let me just blow this up a little bit size-wise. You then have to hold a series of meetings with the MSBA to actually agree on what your enrollment is going to be. So at the time, we had, because they have their own methodology of doing this, we had NASDAQ come back in and do another long-term enrollment projection for us that was current. They've done work for us previously. What we obviously have is the historical, so we can look back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but we as a district can't really project out. So NASDAQ has a methodology that they use, so we had them come back in and help us with a projection because we knew our enrollment was going to be increasing a little bit. MSBA then has their own format that they use as they're trying to figure out exactly what the enrollment should be. And you have to reach agreement at some point around what the build enrollment is going to be. So to get prepared for this meeting, again, we had them come back. And on my little spreadsheet, I'm just going to kind of walk you through this. So what I was obviously always hoping for is that we would get at or as close to the NASDAQ projection, because that's kind of our projection. That's what we'd like to see have happen. It gives into consideration the historical data. It has a good outlook for 10 years, and it also takes into consideration some of the building that's going to be happening in town, because we had NASDAQ actually work with local realtors. They pulled different building permits to kind of get a sense for what was on the horizon. So I wanted to get as close to the NASDAQ number as we could. I was pleasantly surprised at the very outset of the project, when you look at what they consider the base enrollment, which is in these, in the red on my spreadsheet. If we just did the grade 5 to 6, we were only off by 9 students. So they were only, 9 less than I had wanted. If we went up to grades 4 to 6, it was 15 students less. And if we went to 5 to 8 as the 4-grade level school, we were only 25 students less than they wanted. So that was kind of an excellent starting point. I don't think I've actually started this close to where we were in any project I've ever worked with them on. So that was already a good feeling coming out of the gate. What we know over here then in our purple, the purple columns, is we actually know what the grade 4 student population is right now in front of us. And obviously, so we can track them going right up through 7th grade based on the data. These kids are already here. We know them. This is a very solid number. When we actually did that, we came up with, 818 kids, 1214, 1658. Those would be like a building size that you'd need to fit the current population that we have in those 3 scenarios. I then took a look at, over the 10-year projection, the highest enrollment that we would ever have in the building. And again, these kids aren't necessarily here yet, but it's the blue years. In 2030, when in 4th grade, we'd hit 479 based on the NASDAQ projection, and that obviously carries along. So when we do that, then our build actually goes up to 934, 1352, and 828. So when I went into the meeting with the MSBA and I participated, Dennis was online participating, Pat Maloney, who's the select board member, who's the chair of the group, and Paul Cohen was on the meeting also to kind of argue our case. These are the numbers that we had kind of going in. And again, we wanted to kind of figure out how off they were going to be from the, from the MSBA's enrollment projection. After we had a very good conversation with them, they said they would look at additional data that we had, even around, at that time, I think it was only a couple days prior, there was a 40B application that had come in for Riverneck. Yeah, that was potentially going to be a site, so they said, give us all that information, we'll look at that. And long story short, just this, again, about a week or two ago, they ended up coming back to us and they gave us the final design enrollment. So the design enrollment itself is in the yellow. So what they're indicating is if we actually did a grade 5 and 6, I was saying I'd love to do it for 934, and they were at 930. So you can see that there were actually 4 less in the yellow column. That's still not bad. Then we actually get a higher design build if we do the 4.6 or the 5.8 than even our NESDEC projection supports. So, we get an extra 38 kids at the 3 grade level school and an extra 57 kids at the top school, which is phenomenal, coming out of the gates. Again, that is taking care of our 10-year projection and, a little bit of a cushion for the future. So those numbers, even being off by 4 is nothing in the scheme of doing this. That was like so good in the end that I'm just very happy. So these are basically our design enrollments that we would build to. When we'd have a designer come on board, we'd have an OPM come on board, they would run through all these different scenarios, and we'd know based on square footage costs and how many kids we would have in the buildings, this is what these 3 options would be designed to. So our next step in the process is ultimately to sign the certification, say we agree, this is what we want to build to, because then the MSBA will take these numbers and work them into the feasibility study agreement. And that's the last step that we have to sign off by the holidays. It's just waiting for us to sign this form and get back to them. But I just want to share with you, it's kind of a key milestone of this whole project is getting this enrollment projection. And it actually worked out to be a little bit better than I even anticipated or hoped. So that's like really good news kind of going into it at this point. I know it's a lot of numbers on the sheet, but I'm happy to explain or discuss any of the things on here that you'd like. But I think this actually sets up very well as we start getting into this next phase of the project.
Just one question to make sure, to clarify this in my mind 100%. So if we go with the 4 to 6 model,
Yeah.
we then, of course, free up the 4th grade at the elementary levels for expansion and growth there. If we go with the 5 through 8, then the way that's possible is because one of the schools remains available to be modified and so on.
McCarthy would be.
McCarthy.
It would only be McCarthy. We'd have to choose McCarthy.
So as part of this project, we had to designate which school was going to be our
Okay, got
priority.
it.
And we already went through the process of designating Parker.
Okay.
So at the end of this process, Parker has to come offline. So Parker would be demolished and come offline, and McCarthy would remain an extra site. What we use for McCarthy, if it stays a 7-8, if it would have become, say, a 5th elementary school, that's basically going to be the swing space is either going to come from McCarthy under a 5-8 scenario, or it's going to come from moving 1 grade level, 100 kids, out of each of the elementary school levels up to this new school. So one way or the other, McCarthy still gets used, and that's how we're able to not have it be 2 school projects and keep the buildings all in function.
Okay.
We're still keeping in the mix here an option where it's simply replacing Parker 5, 6. And at that point, we gain nothing in terms of the overcrowding issues we have at the elementary level.
Correct.
But does that have to be in the mix because that's the current grade configuration?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
That's MSBA's thing, yeah.
but who ultimately decides and when, which model we're going to move forward with? MSBA, or is it?
No, so it's going to be a combination, because just because of the cost involved, like the MSBA is going to have a stay in what happens. Like, we're going to have to prove to them which of these 3 models really works best for Chelmsford, and which the town of Chelmsford is going to support. So what we're going to do is we're going to certify the enrollment projection. We're going to get this back to them. We're going to do the feasibility study agreement. That'll get done by the holidays. Then we have to wait for the board meeting of the MSBA, which is either the end of January or early February, to officially be invited into the feasibility study.
Right.
So when we get officially invited into the feasibility study, let's just say that's February at this point. We then have to do additional paperwork and documentation. But the first step in the feasibility study is to hire an owner's project manager, an OPM, and a designer to actually design the school, take a look at the options. And I knew you were part of the group when Dora Whittier worked with us, and we did the visioning for like schools and things like that. This group is going to have to come back in. A new group is going to have to come back in and basically start from scratch and hold kind of community visioning sessions for the town, taking a look at these three options. Again, when we had the Dora Whittier study, it was a blank slate, and I think there were 20-something options we were looking at. This group is going to come in and just hone in on these three options. These are the only three things we're looking at this point. So they're going to, again, hold sessions. They're going to seek parent input, student input, just general community members' input. It could be surveys, focus groups, forums. It's going to be detailed work that's going to happen. You know, the OPM and the designer will likely come on board in the springtime. And then they'll start to do some of their investigatory work over the summer. And I think the real conversations about which of the three options we're going to explore would likely happen next fall. So it'll be like the fall of '25. Through the spring of '26 is when all this work is going to happen, because I envision that all getting wrapped up in the summer of '26. And ideally in the fall of '26 would be when there would be like a ballot question to fund one of these three options. Debt exclusion or debt override exemption, something like that. But we'd be going to the ballot, similar to the way the fire stations went to the ballot, to get people hopefully to support our project. But over the course of the next school year is when we're going to kind of figure out which of the three we're going to go with. And again, we have to go through this, so Diana's point, we have to just kind of show what just doing a one-for-one replacement of Parker does. It does give us a very new, up-to-date building to take care of at least the 5th and 6th grade long-term enrollment in the district. But it doesn't do anything to really help us with the other levels of the district. So we have to go through the exercises.
Right, so there's going to be data to back all of that up, of course, and we hope that the data will support the picture we want to show. But then there's also just discussion about different things people have to understand about what's educationally sound, developmentally sound. Is there an opportunity at any point to add those things into the mix so it's not just numbers?
No, that's going to come during the visioning.
Okay.
Because there's going to have to be, again, you're going to get staff input. You're going to talk about like what is the right size for a school.
Oh, good,
You
okay.
know, again, like I've said this from the get-go, I have a little bit of concern of going back to the 4-level. Like one middle school for the entire town, you'd have a middle school that's bigger than a high school. So like how conducive is that? But you still have to go through it because that was one of the options that we got approved to look at. We still have to look at just the one-for-one replacement, although that doesn't do anything for us long-term. You have to look at it. And there are going to be some, I'm sure, that say, you know what, let's do that because it's of the three options, it's going to be the cheapest because you're only dealing with, 2 grade levels as opposed to 3 or 4. But it's not going to help you long-term.
Yeah, that's my worry. I don't want people just looking at the money. Well, this is the one that
Well, no, but
costs
that's-
less, so let's go with it. And
That's what this designer and the OPM are going to help us with.
Good.
They're going to help kind of frame the discussion. They're going to facilitate with us the sessions. And we're going to do pros and cons of all three options and have a series of community meetings to talk about them and ultimately agree on which one we want to bring forward. We just have to be certain when we bring one forward, that's the project that the towns can get behind and ultimately support.
yeah. Okay.
But I'd say the bulk of the work administratively is like now, but then the real work, like the fun kind of work, I'm talking about this, is really next school year.
Any other questions?
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I couldn't be more pleased with the, just at this point, getting the numbers where they are. Often you don't want to start at a deficit and you want to be kind of fighting for it. They were very good to work with, the MSBA staff. They took into consideration all of our information, the supplemental information that we provided, and I think it was very helpful, the step that we took to have the updated NASDAQ enrollment projection, because again, that's hard data to use. A lot of districts may not have done that going in, and you're just kind of dependent on their data. Now, in our case, their data actually wouldn't have been horrific for us, but we were able to still use that NASDAQ data to get it to be even a little bit higher than it was going to be, so I'm happy about that.
It's a bit astounding when you look at the possibility that we would have 1885 as student enrollment in 5 through 8. That is that's how much more than our current high school. That is a substantial amount higher
Yeah.
than our 4 grade levels at high school right now.
Now, Chelmsford High has been that high,
Yeah.
Higher.
previously,
higher.
right?
Yeah.
But now
2,400
it's,
probably
now
at
it's
some
not.
point.
It's an insanely big
Yeah.
middle school.
That is a very big middle school for
That's very large.
for that age group in particular.
And they took into account all these new projects like West Campus and said River Neck and, that they would come,
Right.
possibly coming on board and, that
Some
you
of
gotta
the
be
West
prepared for 'em.
Campus are for sale already,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, so they were good in that regard, so.
They did.
All right, any other questions on the enrollment report? I don't think we have to do anything regarding that. Those are all
No, I guess more so, it's just procedurally for us. I guess you could do a vote to just accept the report as a report of progress, or,
Yeah.
I move that we accept the presentation on the update to the project for a new school, which included the proposal, the 3 proposals potentially that will be presented to the
for the
MSBA.
yeah,
enrollment
the
data.
certified design enrollments.
Yeah.
For the certified design enrollment.
Great.
Great.
Okay,
Couldn't have said it better myself, Maria.
I knew it.
I'll second.
whoever seconds has to repeat the whole thing, though.
Oh, yeah. Including for the
You want us
certified design
You
enrollment.
good?
All right, we have a second from John. Okay, any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Great.
Thank you. And again, we'll get all this executed, and then right after the holidays, we'll get deep into work, so there'll be updates as we go. Third is just kind of a final update for you. This is just where our deliverables stand at this point with the 8 different submissions we had to do. So you can see the enrollment meeting was held on 8/8, and then we finally got the forms back on November 4th from the MSBA with the design built, so that was able to get plugged off. So the last thing we just need to do now is, once we sign this, send it in, they'll send us the feasibility study agreement. We'll execute that at the town, send it back, and wait for our board meeting in a January, early February to be accepted in feasibility.
All right. What work, if any, is it for us as a school committee once we get into feasibility? Is there anything besides advocacy that we're going to need to be involved with?
I mean, a lot of it is going to start, the building committee will start meeting more regularly, like when you actually kind of get into the meat of things. So, when your OPM and your designer come on board, what we would likely do, similar to like I work with DM, we'd probably figure out quarterly or, maybe like a annual report where we would have the OPM of the designer come and give updates to the school committee. They'll be updating the building committee as they go, but just to make sure that there's another opportunity to be kind of seen in the public and to talk about the different pieces of work that are happening with the project. Yes, there is a big advocacy piece that's going to come, and I think we'd have to talk about more of like a strategy to really support this school. Different communities go about it differently. I know, we're going to be a little bit, and I'm going to be a little limited in my capacity as far as, because it's a ballot question, as far as like promoting the ballot question and things like that. I can provide information, but I can't really take a stance on it, so it becomes a little bit challenging. Obviously, I'd love to see a new school and support that. At times, there are like parent groups that get together that, we produce all the information for them, and they help the community kind of educate what's happening. It could be the PTOs, it could be the council of schools, could take a really active role, or maybe even have a subcommittee that kind of worked on PR and just, again, holding different sessions to kind of talk about the school, the need, things along those lines. So I do definitely think this spring, when the OPM and the designer come on board, you're going to start to hear a little bit more about what's happening. But then when the designer gives us the schedule of how they're going to conduct the visioning, that's again when the school committee will weigh in.
Great. Other questions on the scheduling of events?
The only other thing I thought about in terms of the visioning is working with the strategic plan for the town. How how does the building and its, this whole new building, do they talk about this at all?
Well, I'll know a lot more next week. Next week, we meet with the consulting group to go through that visioning
Oh, I
stage.
see.
But a lot of that will already be complete before we ever get to that next stage with this project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because do they talk, the vision of the town for education itself?
Yes, a lot of input has come in about the schools themselves and then also about the facilities. So we'll have to see where that gets prioritized in terms of the big picture for the town.
Yeah,
Yeah, next week, Tuesday, we have an all-day meeting
sounds
to
interesting.
do that.
Fun.
All day.
Yeah. No, I know, just even from the little sessions that I've attended, and I know you were at as well, it definitely seems like schools and the value of education in the community has been a high priority, like number one or two on the different surveys and the feedback focuses. And I do think infrastructure has also been noted across all different groups,
Yeah, I
not only for the schools, but even town buildings and things like
Absolutely.
that. So that I would be very surprised if like education and like infrastructure investments weren't right at the top of the list.
Okay.
So I would have to think that it would gel.
Yeah.
Super.
See, like I said, all day Tuesday.
I know.
Thank you, Sue.
All right, any other comments on building project? Okay. All right, next item.
And again, I'll close it off for you when we do have that final one in, the feasibility agreement.
Okay.
Next, item 4 is just the school's presentation schedule for this year, just so you can kind of flag for on your calendar, the different school committee meetings where we'll be having the schools come in to talk a little bit about work that's ongoing in their buildings, what may be tied to their strategic plan documents, elements that they really like to highlight and show for us, in other areas where they may be putting some extra effort because they want to see a little bit more return on some of the investments that they're making. So we're going to have them come in the second meeting of each month. And again, we're going to have South Row. We're going to actually welcome them next week. They'll be our first school to present. We are going to have the middle schools present on their own this year. So we're going to have McCarthy come in separate from Parker. They did it last year together because they were brand new. But this is our schedule for the schools right now through the end of the school year. I'm kind of working on putting a master schedule together also just for our meetings, because I've got to weave in the different presentations from DM group, and if there are departments we want to have specifically come in and present, I just want to kind of weave that in so we don't have like too many presentations on the same night. But I'm working kind of on a master calendar behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. So that was my question on this. This is not the master list of all the presentations that we're thinking about.
These are the
This is
schools.
just the schools.
This is just the schools, because
Okay.
it's hard for them to kind of plan, so I wanted to get them locked in. They don't have quite as much flexibility as some of the other players do, but this is just your schools, so that you'll know when the 7 schools are coming in.
Now, I noticed CHIPS, for example, like there's, we did have presentations around the community education and CHIPS and things like that in the past. Is that going to be scheduled at a later date, or?
We usually have CHIPS and ComEd come in together right before the summer. So it's like the last part of May, early part of June. We'll likely do that again. It's a nice opportunity for for community ed to be able to kind of talk about some of their summer programming and things. But we'll definitely get them on a schedule. This is just the K to 12.
Yeah, that's fine. I just was making sure there wasn't a reason that was left off.
No. We love to see the CHIPS and ComEd come in.
Is there a particular theme this year in this presentation? I know SEL one year, and then, is there anything in particular? Math, are we talking about what's going on with the new math? I don't know what's.
Yeah, I mean, I leave it a little open to the schools as far as we ask them to take a look at, like, within the buildings, they all have different goals. They have literacy goals, they have math goals, they have SEL goals. Oftentimes, they do like to come in and spotlight something that's like really special to them that they're working on. I know like Harrington did the work on the restorative circles that they were doing, because that was something that was a big focus for them. I've asked them this year to just take a look at their plans and something that they're specifically trying to work on, whether it's an area that they're trying to improve upon, or it's an area that they feel is really working well for them, that could potentially be like a model for some of our other schools. I would not be surprised. I didn't want to have every single school coming in talking about the exact same thing, though, because like, obviously, we have the math initiative this year. I'm certain that, math is going to come up in some of these presentations. And there may be times also where we might weave in like different departments with a school if there is a particular focus. But then if there's a particular department that isn't getting tied into some of the school presentations, we certainly, as we have in the past, could work to have them come in on their own and make a presentation as well.
I love the idea of hearing from the schools, things that they're excited to talk about. And I do feel that it would be very helpful to us as a committee if we explicitly asked the schools to talk about what they see as some of their growing pains isn't the right word, but I would call maybe growing edges, things that they're encountering that are tricky, that they're trying to navigate and that are difficult, in part because I think that is just as valuable for us to know as the highlight reel is, and because I think it gives us a really good perspective as we think about, do any of these have policy implications or budget implications that we should be thinking about? So I would guess I would ask if it's possible to just encourage them not to feel like they have to put on the best face, that they can feel really comfortable sharing with us what they feel like are some growing pains for some of their new programming and ideas.
Right, any other thoughts, comments?
So in terms of the departments and presentations by the various departments, because I made my own list of about, and none of it is the schools, okay? But I think that I would love to see us this year also really get an update on what's happening with the curriculum in a sense. So for example, went to the conference, went to this wonderful thing on mental health. Started thinking, okay, which classes in our system and at what level are we bringing up any of these mental health issues so that, kids are aware of what's going on and so on. And I know that there's some, because, my own children have been through this.
Right.
But I don't know where it is right now. So thinking about updates like that so that we get a sense as a community
Sure.
of how our entire curriculum is going. And I think that would require really looking at each department and what's going on in each one for to get an entire idea of what we're teaching. And I think that would be a valuable thing to do, so that, because there's a lot of richness in it. There really is. There's a lot available, and a lot's changing. So those are the things that I had here. For example, in business and technology, I know that there's been tremendous amount of changes there, and that the pathways have impacted them quite a bit. And I don't know if there's any updates on what's happening with that. So those kinds of things,
Okay.
I think, would be valuable to us.
Do you think that would be more valuable to do it separate from the report outs that we do through like the strategic plan work?
Well, I don't think the strategic plan work and reports bring in exactly what our curriculum is. I think what that's doing is focusing on what Diana is talking about, which is, there are things that we need to improve on and that we want to make better within the system. And that's what the strategic plan, I think, is all about. Where we want to make sure, math is focused on and so on. But don't want to leave behind all the other parts of the curriculum.
Why don't you share with me your list of departments?
Will
And,
do.
And we'll talk about seeing if we can weave in department presentations to some of the other meetings as I'm putting the bigger calendar together.
That would be terrific.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Just as an aside, so like when we look at the strategic plan, we hear from the groups, we look at discrepancy and say for our ELL kids and how they're doing with the curriculum and testing, but we don't ever hear about how that program is run. And what is done actually to help support these kids and give them, I know from working in the school, but as a school committee, we don't really ever hear how the services for those kids actually work. I think that would be valuable to know more about as we're
Right.
exploring how do we close those gaps.
And making us aware of the numbers even. For instance, sometimes I hear things like, there's a very large number of EL children in this particular school, and still only one staff member, whatever. Those are important things for us to know in order to figure out budget for next year and what to do and keep those improvements going. And that doesn't seem to have much to do with a strategic plan, yet it does, because if we don't take care of those things, we're not going to be able to move forward with a strategic plan. So,
I would just add that, for example, I don't think it's an explicit item on our strategic plan to know about how our high school enrollment in early college and innovation pathways are going, where the numbers are, where the interest level is, what we're hearing about early outcomes for students who have engaged in those pathways. But that is a significant impact on the shape of our high school, and in theory could have an impact on the way that we shape our middle school to feed into the high school too. So that's one example of something that's not on a strategic plan that I would love to know more about.
Sure.
Great, great suggestions. All right. Anything else? Okay. Do we not have any field trips?
No, I had put that on the agenda just because I had a feeling that one was going to come in from a school, and I didn't want to not have it on there.
Okay.
But then we do not have a field trip to present tonight. So I do not have anything further.
Okay. All right. Any liaison reports anybody has?
I can speak a little bit. South Rose PTO met on the 4th. That's last week. Feels like a very long time ago. And it's going well. They were really pleased with the funds raised at the pumpkin fair that was held back in October. But just generally a lot of enrichment happening, sort of achieving some of the things that they were fundraising for. So the month of October has been very busy with fundraising. They've had a lot of success bringing authors into the school in partnership with bookstores. So that's been kind of exciting. This year's student council at South Row has approximately 60 kids on it, which is even larger than last year's huge student council at South Row. So it's a real testament to the excitement and interest that the kids have in leadership opportunities. That's more than half the class. And also a testament to the success of that program. So that's very exciting. Parker and McCarthy are meeting later this week, so no updates for them right now. And I was happy to participate in the SEL subcommittee for the Strategic Plan Steering Committee. No kind of major takeaways, but it feels like there's good progress.
Susan, anything?
Yeah, I attended the Chelmsford Friends of Music meeting a few weeks ago, and they are really working on invigorating themselves. I think they had a tough time the past couple of years, but the meeting was well attended. They have a big group, new group of people really trying to put new life into CFOM. They have a 4-pronged refocus and realign plan to refresh how they do their funding for their enrichment and scholarships, to refocus on the friends. They really want to bring in the idea of it's fun to participate in CFOM activities, and they're looking for some community ideas, like having some music trivia nights or some things like that going on in the community to get the community as a whole interested in music and therefore supporting their fundraising efforts. They're really trying to convince kids that it's really worthwhile to help out and do things like the bottle and can drive, that they can get credit, community service credit, and have fun and meet people doing that. And also really working on recruiting student and parent ambassadors for their ensembles and for their other things going on. So they're just trying to breathe new life, and they had a lot of ideas. Some people had some really new ideas on how to run some things. So hopefully we'll see them doing some fun things out in the community and raising funds for their efforts at the same time. So it was a good meeting.
it's absolutely
John,
wonderful.
anything? Yeah.
I went to the Council of Schools, as did Dr. Lang and Dr. Hirsch. And I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I think it was a really well-run meeting. It was a very long meeting, but the content was important. It brought together all the PTOs, which were very well represented during the meeting. It was on October 17th. One of the things that came out of this that I was so happy to hear was that we are going to get Katie Greer as a presentation for community and for parents, and that will be sometime in January. And she is a presenter basically on social media and online type of presence. Okay, so I think that that's going to be good and something for us to watch out for, and to let our different PTOs make sure they know that it's going to be available.
Is there a date for that?
It's in January. I thought I wrote it down, but I think that they hadn't finalized it. So I don't want to say it, because it was
I
January.
don't have the date off the top of my head. Were they looking at two different dates?
They were.
Yeah, I
So
don't-
I'm not going to say, but I'll make sure that we know
Okay.
when it's coming. They had a lot of different issues. It's great to know that the read-in has a representative. She's going to organize it. She's a VP for the read-in. It's Melissa McCaffrey. And they have an entire board themselves. Lisa Bryant, Ginger Skoog are the co-presidents. Melissa Brennan is the secretary, and Courtney Cooper is the treasurer. So they're trying to make sure that they have different processes that PTOs share in, that they can use those services. So for example, scheduling type of programs, or Zoom as a subscription that all the PTOs can access, those type of things. It was good to see, really wonderful to see. All the power to them.
All right, anybody have any new items?
I probably should have said this under liaison reports. It's not really a liaison report, but just sharing officially that I attended as our representative at the Massachusetts Association of School Committees as a delegate, voting on the resolutions and platforms. I voted according to the way that our committee had decided as a majority. With one exception, there was one that had significant amendments that addressed some of the concerns that were brought up by this group. So I was advised to use my best judgment, and I voted in favor once they made those adjustments. But all of the items that we discussed a few meetings ago wound up passing by a pretty big majority by the group. And just wanted to share that it was a successful conference, that a few of our group attended and learned a lot about what's happening in other places across the state, as well as, getting some ideas and inspiration.
Thank you for doing that, because it's a long day, to go through those.
How
Very
long, how
long
long
and
was the session?
Lots of parliamentary procedure stuff going on.
All right, I had a couple of things. First of all, I just wanted to actually thank the town meeting reps for their approval of the two projects, the money for the McCarthy Tennis Court area.
Yes.
It's going to be a great project once it gets done, and then obviously the money for the South Row roof project. So I just want to thank all the town meeting reps for their approval in that. I had a couple of people talk to me about cell phones, and I just wanted to get some clarification of what kind of things you'd like to bring. Are we looking for, like, what policies do we have in the schools? Are we looking for information of whether what we're doing isn't work? I don't know. Before we're talking about, like, okay, what exactly people are gonna.
So I can share, I specifically am curious to kind of gauge the interest in our community and in our group about looking in two specific areas around policy. I don't have a strong stance yet on what I believe we should do, but I'd like to explore options. One is around establishing guidelines, and I'm specific in using the word guidelines rather than enshrining policy right now, around AI use, and potentially, I attended a session at MASC that looked at a couple of models of Massachusetts school committees that had enacted guidelines that really talked about the aspects of AI that connected back to established policies around things like intellectual property and student privacy, which have implications with AI use. And there has been some highly publicized concern, I guess, around what could happen if there isn't a policy established and there's a dispute over whether or not a student has violated what is not right now a guideline. So I would love to explore whether we wanted to consider some of the models that are already out there and establish one of those. That's one thing. The other thing I'd like to do is look at whether our current sort of school-by-school approaches to cell phones in school is sufficient, or if there needs to be a kind of a district-wide discussion about setting I don't know if it's unclear, but setting a a more proactive policy decision around that. I don't know what I think about that, but I would like to know sort of what the community is looking for, and I'm thinking of various roles in the community.
Anybody else have any input on that or questions on that?
I think it's good.
Okay.
I agree with it.
You want to clarify?
One of the things that might be really actually important in that second approach would be, second thought, about the cell phones, is to actually look at what each school has sent out
Absolutely.
as guidelines and so on. So that would be one. And then on the AI use and models and so on, thinking about what we're doing in our participation as a district in the MIT
group.
program. They had a group there at the conference too that I went up to on the AI. And just how are we ready for this? Are we ready to, do a model type of policy for our district? Or do we need to do more work in that type of group? I don't know. So,
Yeah, I will say that I agree that like taking a step to establish policy, if we did, we might be the first district in Massachusetts to do so, based on what I was hearing at the presentations I was at and my conversations with other school committee members. So what I'm not proposing right now, we sit here and set a policy. Somebody made a really great quote. What we're working with right now is the dumbest AI that will ever exist, and setting a policy based on that feels premature. But I think looking at whether we need to kind of explicitly connect AI to our existing policies in a way that can serve as a guideline for now. Newton is one school district that has established, I want to say it might be Wilmington, that's another, but there's 2 or 3 districts I wrote down at the conference that we could look at to see if any of that connects to what we're looking into. I agree, first auditing what's already happening and maybe hearing from the school administrators, are issues arising already or not, and it would be worth knowing that.
And we just had a group attend, right? Didn't we just have a group attend something to do with MIT or
Yeah,
something?
that was the MIT group. So
Yeah,
Bill
right.
Silva, the tech director, is kind of leading a team from Chelmsford. There are 8 people on the team who are participating in this kind of focus group series through MIT, taking a look specifically at AI use in educational settings. There's a whole component on policy and like how that's going to have to evolve in districts. I think everything is like very premature at this point. It's like early on in the development stage. I know they went away to MIT for a full-day training in the middle of October, and then there's like 3 sessions that they have between now and the springtime that are going to be in district or working in like neighboring districts. So I can ask Bill, I mean, Bill's kind of heading that up. I can ask him to keep his ear open on like policy development type stuff, thinking like long-term. And there are implications policy-wise that even tie to curriculum and, plagiarism and things like that. So we'll definitely kind of keep our ear open for what's happening on that front. I'm wondering, not to jump all over the place, but I'm wondering on the cell phone thing, what if we started, because I don't know off the top of my head even know what the actual, because it's not a policy, like what the guidelines in the schools are now that they're using. What if I start by collecting from the 7 schools? I think it's safe to say CHIPS isn't using them. But if I start in the 7 schools and figure out like what they actually have for kind of their guidelines that they're internally using, and then take a look at our existing, say, policy or any procedures that Bill even has through technology, if I kind of pull that all together just to actually see where we're at. And then we could maybe think about next steps as far as kind of maybe surveying other districts or seeing like who's doing what. But why don't we start by, I'll pull all the information together for us to at least be able to see where we're at. And then we can figure out how
Sounds
to.
like a
I
good,
actually have it open right in front of me. I mean, the handbook has a paragraph about cell phone usage and what the first offense is, what the second and subsequent
High school?
offenses are using it. It's right in the handbook.
Are you in the high school one or that?
It's just the general one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just the Chelmsford Public Schools Student Family Handbook. There is a paragraph about phone usage, so I think it would be good to make sure that everyone in the schools is aware of it, and then how is each school carrying this out?
And how is it working?
We've talked about phones a few times in the past, but it comes up every few years. I think people,
But I think we're hearing things that doesn't seem to be handled the same way in every school, and
yeah, and is it that some schools aren't quite following what the policy that's there, or is it that the policy itself is very open and leading to a lot of different interpretations? I think it would be great to start with hearing what's actually happening on the ground and going from there.
Yeah, I can pull that stuff together. And like I said, I'll note the policies, and even if there's another document that I'm not even aware of right now that's out there, pull it all together for starters, and then we can have a discussion about like what next steps should be.
Great.
Thank you, Dennis, for
Yep.
bringing that up. That's
No
great.
problem. Couple other, just reminders more than anything else, we are meeting next week again. So just, back to back sometimes. We forget. And then we just got an email tonight, right before the meeting started from Manager Cohen. Tri-board meeting is Monday, December 9th.
Yeah, I saw that.
Here, 6 o'clock,
Okay,
just so people can put it on their calendars.
all right.
All right, anybody have any emails? I have a couple, so I just wanna, okay. All right, so I received a few emails, well, I received an email and then another message. So Laurie McCarron, who was an active member of our CPAC for many, many years and still very involved at the state level, wanted me to let everyone know that November has been designated as CPAC Awareness Month. She included a proclamation that went along with that. And she personally wanted to thank the school committee, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the parents, the caregivers for their support and efforts regarding our students. Just gave a little blurb about CPAC. CPAC was established under Mass Chapter 71B, Section 3, Paragraph 19, in charge with advising the school committee on the education and safety of students with disabilities, meeting with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of special education programs. More information about and resources pertaining to CPAC is available through our local CPAC, which we have, as well as at the Chelmsford Public Library and many other online supports. So I thank Ms. McCarron for reminding us that this is CPAC Awareness Month. I'm sure we'll hear from CPAC later on during our school year. And then finally, Superintendent forwarded to you a letter from a parent we received about the use of de-escalation rooms in some schools. She didn't want the letter read, but she wanted to make you all aware of her concerns. And along with that letter, you also received some information from Amy Reese, our special education director, regarding what de-escalation rooms are and how they're used and what type of policies are related to that. So I just wanted to, if you hadn't read it yet, I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Okay.
Right, anything else? Okay, all right, if not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
All right.